A funny thing happened on my way to Thursday. Well, actually, it wasn't funny at all. It was another case of high, pompous, and hypocritical Republicans and white racists condemning yet another black American for complaining about the atrocities inflicted against people of color in this country. This time, it's Miss Gwen Berry, who is the target of their hate and color confliction. Since when do black American athletes, or anyone else for that matter, have to forfeit their rights as Americans in order to satisfy white racist Americans? Like Miss Berry, I am an American and I love America, but that doesn't mean I live as free or enjoy the same privileges on an equal basis as white Americans. It doesn't mean the political system and the powers that be treat me as fairly as the whites are treated. I am an American and I love America, but that doesn't qualify America as a perfect nation, and nor does it place America above scrutiny or criticism. I am an American and I love America, but that doesn't mean I don't holler when I'm hit, nor does it mean I don't hit back when I'm hit. If America can fight back and defend itself when attacked, then I can fight back and I can defend myself when attacked. And if I'm to be celebrated for fighting for America, then why am I condemned for fighting for myself? Now, this is my take, so don't hate. Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to another segment of my take on this Thursday, July the 1st, 2020, the first day of the month, and of course, the first Thursday of the month. Well, we celebrate Independence Day this Sunday, July the 4th, 1776. That's when we became a nation known as these United States of America. And I want you to have a good and safe weekend, if you will, please. Amen. Now, you know, this is where I discuss various issues that relate to everyday challenges and issues of life. And as you already know, I'm subject to talk about anything and even sometimes anybody, but only if they deserve the attention. What do you call it when one side of your mouth doesn't agree with the other side? Native Americans call it speaking with a forked tongue. Webster, Wikipedia, and the Bible even calls it hypocrisy. I call it a dual standard. I call it an unfair system. I call it deeply divided nation, and I call it hypocrisy at its worst. I call it a disgrace. As black Americans and people of color, why are we constantly having to defend ourselves against the racist and unfair treatment of people of color in America? How high and how often do I have to fly Old Glory to show you that I'm a good American? On January 6th of this year, we saw a glowing example of an old saying in motion: if you're white, you're right. If you're black, get back. It's a low down, dirty shame and disgrace. Why are the perpetrators and promoters of hate and racial violence trying to pass themselves off as good, decent, upstanding Americans when they are the cause of the great divide in America? I believe it's because one way to keep the attention off yourself and throw rocks and hide your hand is to engage in a campaign of claiming and blaming that's directed at everybody else. Why must blacks in America keep confirming in word and deed, I am an American and I'm a good Negro, and you're not going to hear me complaining? Why is that? Who's worthy of demanding that I live my life as an American, proving my worth and my allegiance every day for the rest of my life? How many flags do we have to display on our homes? How many flags do we have to display on our vehicles before we'll be accepted as Americans? How many times do we have to recite the Pledge of Allegiance? How many times do we have to sing America the Beautiful before we can be considered bona fide Americans? Let me tell you something, my friend. White racist Americans, from the mud holes of America to the White House, to those who operate in tall corporate buildings of this country, have a plan, and they are working that plan. I'm talking about while you are asleep. While you are out having fun, they are working that plan. And this plan is designed in an effort to control, to intimidate, demonize Americans and other so-called undesirables, these racist Republicans and Democrats alike, corporate giants, they twist what we say and do, put a spin on what we say and do, outright lie about what we say and do. While in many cases, whites get a free pass and can just do about anything, say anything. And rather than being condemned, they are celebrated, they are defended, and they are excused. Case in point, U.S. Capitol, January 6, 2021. Case in point, senseless and brutal killing of innocent black Americans by police in America. Case in point, a former president of the United States is a proven compulsive and perpetual liar and demagogue, and yet still celebrated by millions of Americans, and I could go on and on. But we aren't supposed to say anything about that. We aren't supposed to mention that. We're supposed to keep our mouths shut. Whites, which included police officers, military personnel, firefighters, lawyers, they can mount an all-out violent assault on the Capitol of the United States of America, sending representatives and legislators, employees running in fear of their lives, with many injuries and some losing their life. And when the dust settled, the patriotic attackers had all been allowed to quietly return to their homes without a single arrest being made that day that I can recall. What is the response of many Republican lawmakers, many white racist extremists, and everyday white collar, blue collar, confused and misguided workers? What's their response? Their response is this: that it never happened. It never happened. As far as they were concerned, as far as they are concerned, it was just another day of what Trump called special Americans touring the U.S. Capitol. They defend it, or they just simply dismiss it. That's out of one side of their mouth. On the other hand, innocent, peaceful protests by blacks and others have been met with immediate and violent and often deadly consequences. You know what happens after that? Then the police, the military, they're celebrated for that quick and decisive and brutal response in putting down these, what they then call insurrectionists, thugs, anarchists, terrorists, and the police are hailed as heroes. That's the other side of their mouth. So what do? What do you call it when one side of your mouth doesn't agree with the other side? But we're not supposed to notice those discrepancies. That is, if we're good Americans, we're not supposed to mention that if we're good Americans. Yet, black Americans can have their head put in a vise, cranked down until their ears are touching, but they better not give any indication that it hurts or that anything wrong is happening to them. That would be un-American. We can't have that. As black Americans, how are we to prove our worth? How are we to prove our patriotism? What is our payment for citizenship in America? And what is required of us? Is it to sit down and shut up, or you will put us out of your country? The ruling party and the so-called ruling class always use intimidation and scare tactics, which were used often and used effectively by the former president of these United States, with the goal being to keep the lowly citizens quiet and docile. Now, don't think for a moment that this started with the former president. These tactics and these practices have been around in nations around the world, including America, since dirt, or since there was an America. The mentality of some white Americans that they're supposed to be able to kick our butts whenever they feel like it, and as often as they feel like it. And we aren't supposed to say a mumbling word. That's nothing new, my friend. It started way back, long before Jack Johnson, long before Joe Louis, Jesse Owens, Jackie Robinson, Paul Robeson. It started long before Jim Brown, Tommy Smith, John Carlos. It started long before Colin Kaepernick. It began long before Gwen Berry was even a thought in her mother's mind. This kind of hatred and equality and discrimination has been around since whites met blacks for the first time, with thousands of blacks being victimized. We are a nation that still tolerates and promotes the battle flag and the national flag of a defunct nation called the Confederate States of America that did all it could to destroy this country. And yet you question my patriotism? With Confederate flags flying from state capitals throughout the South, displayed on vehicles of all kinds, from country pickup trucks to Hummers, Mercedes, BMWs, on fancy limousines, and yet you question my patriotism? With the white is right crowd attacking and laying siege to the nation's capital, causing death and destruction, and yet you question my patriotism? Confederate statues and monuments were allowed to be erected and remain prominently displayed throughout this country, and yet you question my patriotism. You elect a president who I believe was more instrumental in dividing our country than any other president, who told more blatant lies than any other president, who manipulated, pimped out, and exploited this country more than any other president, degraded veterans and loyal Americans more than any other. And yet you question my patriotism? With political, partisan politics continuing to divide and destroy our country, and you question my patriotism? Let me ask you something. Who are you to question my patriotism? What are your qualifications? Now that's my take. What do you have to say? Sound off if you can.